Right, today I'm going to change the tuning on one of my sticks. It's a grand stick that was in the classic with a high bass fourth tuning, and I'm going to switch it over to a really fun tuning called the dual bass reciprocal tuning, which puts the whole instrument more in the bass range. I can do this very easily because of all the adjustable hardware on the stick. The fully adjustable nut, the bridge and tailpiece, and the adjustable truss all combine to make the instrument very easy to set up. Also, the pickups are easy to adjust too. I'm going to have to do all those things when I make the change from the classic tuning to the dual bass reciprocal tuning. Before I do the change to the tuning, though, I'm going to clean up the instrument. I can take advantage of the fact that I've got all the strings off, and I have to make a couple of other minor changes as well. You'll notice this instrument doesn't have regular inlays on it. It's got these inlays, which are violin fingerboard tape. I use those on this one because I like to do a lot of tuning experimentation. So I like to have one instrument that doesn't have inlays. So I'm going to start by taking these off. And then after I've got them off, they're easy to come off. And this fingerboard tape, it comes in a roll like this, and I use it for teaching kids where to put your fingers on the violin fingerboard. It's also a really nice, easy way to mark your fretboard if you want to have other references as far as the pitches go. This instrument also had a MIDI pickup on it when I first got it, which I'm not using right now. And I don't really want to give up this fret on this tuning. So I'm going to remove the extra damper material as well. I've taken off all of the pickup hardware, except for the MIDI pickup hardware, except for a little bit of these mounting blocks down here. All right, so the material that we use to clean the instruments is this stuff. It's called Watco Danish oil, and it's not that expensive. I bought this can a little while ago at a local hardware store for $13.19, and this will probably last me 20 years. So cleanup is easy. Just apply with a lint-free cloth. A shop rag will do. And this is the same stuff that they use to actually finish the instruments with. So you just kind of wipe it on, rub it in. Usually when I change my strings, I don't change them all at once. I usually change them one at a time. But now that I've got this instrument freed up, I want to get in here and get out any grime I might have in between the frets. Don't forget this area down by the tailpiece, the sides. Got a little goo back here on the back. Must have been eating donuts. So I never used to do this. Only recently started cleaning my sticks with the Watco, and I really like what it does for the wood, for how the rear of the instrument feels, but without being tacky, like a lacquer finish. Your hand needs to really be able to slide around back there, and a lacquer finish can be kind of tacky. It keeps the thumbs from sliding easily on the back of the board. So I'll probably miss a spot here or there, no big deal. You can always hit the back, even with the strings on the instrument if you want to. So now that I've got the board cleaned up, I want to put the markers down where the notes are going to be in the future, because I'd like to have my inlays correspond to pitches that I'm used to. Now on the dual bass reciprocal tuning, the bass side is a half step lower than it is on the regular classic tuning. So what I'm going to do is put these markers, instead of being at fret number 2, which would be here, I'm going to put them 1 fret higher, fret number 3. Now on the melody side, they're going to be the tuning is going to be E, A, D, G, C, F. So that F is sixth lower than the D normally, or a minor third higher. So if the note is a minor third higher, then I want the inlay to be a minor third lower. So instead of being at number 7, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, I want it to be at number 4. So now I've got my new markers on, and the next thing I want to do is I want to alter the bridge to compensate for the intonation change that's going to be happening. The classic tuning, the strings were a lot thinner, and so the slide blocks for the intonation needed to be set much, much closer to the pickup than they are here. In this particular tuning, the lowest, what we would call the melody string normally, is actually a really low string. It's the E that you would have on bass guitar. So that's even lower than the second position bass string, which in this tuning is going to be an F sharp. So I want to move the slide block over. I know that in order for the intonation to be correct, I'm going to have to move this slide block down to at least be even, if not past, the second bass string, F sharp. And I'll fine-tune the intonation later, but for now I might as well set it up so that it's going to be at least approximate to what it needs to be ultimately. These strings are all lower than these higher bass strings are going to be. They're all going to need to be moved way out in order to have the correct intonation. So I'm going to slide all these back and just have a very slowly increasing, a slowly decreasing scale length, which I will fine-tune later. Now the other change I'm going to need to make is that the strings themselves are a lot thicker, which means that I need to actually lower the settings on the screw height, because the thick strings are going to ride up higher in this V channel on the bridge saddle screws. So I can be pretty sure that these screws are all going to need to be lowered too, so I might as well at least crank them down a little ways to make sure that I don't have to do as much work later on once the strings are on the instrument. So I'll take them down about, I don't know, take them down 1.5 turns to start. And then the other thing I'm certain that I'm going to need to do is to lower the flaps, but I'm going to wait until I get the strings on there to do that, because it's much easier to set those when the strings are on there. You can tell a lot more about what you need to do based on their behavior when they're on the instrument. So I've got my my bridge adjusted, at least an approximation of where it needs to be. And I've got my my board cleaned up. So the next thing I want to do is start stringing the instrument. I want to make sure before I do this, since this is a much thicker string that's going in to this lowest melody tuning machine, I want to make sure that that string is actually going to pass through the hole on there before I start. If it needs to be routed out a little bit, I can put a small drill bit in there, and I can drill this hole out to make it just a little bit bigger. But I don't think I'm going to have to do that. So let's see. This is string number 6. So it's going to fit nicely through that hole, so no problem. All right, so I've got the strings on. I've tuned them up more or less to pitch. And I'm going to let them settle a little bit. I'll clip off the ends, and then I'll go ahead and do my intonation adjustments. The inlays at this point are set so that the D that I would normally have, but an octave lower on the classic melody strings, right there. So that's an octave lower than the classic first string D, and then here's the D on on the bass strings that matches that. So you can see how the pitches are going to line up with the inlays. So I'll go ahead and clip the strings. I want to clip them not too close because I don't want the strings to slip back through the tuning machines. But I'll clip them off, and then we'll go ahead and set the intonation in a little bit. Right now, when I strum the strings, you can see that the action is simply too high. So what we want to do is to lower the flap. So these strings are thicker than the strings that were on the instrument before, and so we want to lower them down so that the damper starts to take effect. So right now the damper is not really doing very much. So I'm going to turn these screws counterclockwise. If I do too far, then you can hear that the string starts to bottom out on the fret. So I want to just do it just to the point where up here at the top, if I go up too high, then the strings really ring. Down too low, they start to fret out. So just to the point where the damper starts to take effect. And you can hear when I tap these strings, I want to get play out of the X fret. I want to be able to use that fret, so I don't want the action to be too low there. I want the strings to really speak there. Now, of course, the notes are out of tune because I haven't really set the intonation or even really tuned the instrument up. Looking down at the bridge now, what I want to notice, and I'll turn this around this way so you can see it in the camera. What I'm noticing about the bridge is that here, this string, because it's a stepped string, is pretty low down. And indeed, when I get up here, you can hear it kind of fretting out. So I'm going to need to raise that string up. And I think, looking carefully at these, this string here is going to need to come up in height a little bit as well. You can see how low that's riding. So generally, we want the underside of the strings to increase slightly from the bridge. From the lowest string to the highest string, the underside of the string should rise a little bit. So the lowest string on the underside is going to be a little bit higher. So let's go ahead and we'll raise these two screws up, and then we'll work on adjusting the pickup volumes. All right, so now that I have my my string height at the bridge set, I've got to adjust the balance between the strings across the instrument with the pickups. So these magnetic shims that Emmett has sent out are really helpful for correcting the balance across the pickup, especially between the second and third lowest strings on each string set. So if I put it in between these strings, I tend to get a really nice damping, very subtle damping effect on those, which makes the lower string out of each set come up a little bit. And I also need to raise this pickup up a little bit. So I'm going to stick my hex wrench in here, and I'm going to raise up this neck pickup just a little bit. Okay, so let's see what kind of a sound that's going to give us here. So now I'm going to check the intonation on the instrument, And I'll start by playing a harmonic. And then I'll tune that, and then I'll tune the octave. So in this case, it looks like it's a little bit flat. So that means I need to shorten the string a little bit. Same with string number 2. String 3 is a little bit flat too. Well, let's see how it sounds.